I'm Ron Allen, the chair for the Jamestown Sklallam Tribe down in Washington State, and one of the PSC commissioners for the tribes on the U.S. side. So Russ, Murray, and McCoy's not here because he got ill, so he's at home in Idaho and couldn't make this event. So even though the three of us are going to sign, we're going to get McCoy's signature at a later date, and so we can finalize it. We'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of the signed copy tomorrow, the day after. When we make copies, make them available to you guys, and then we'll have a finalized one when McCoy we get his signature. So we're going to open up this ceremony. In terms of signing this MOU between the First Nations and the tribes. Something very special. We've been working on it for quite some time. To get this off in a good way, we've asked Ron Suppah from the Warm Springs to open it up and bless us and bless the event in a good way. Ron?
Dech, Claret, Odysseus, Achai, Taikpub, Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. I said good evening, and my Indian name is Achai, which means magpie. And I represent the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. And thank you guys for asking me to provide the invocation. Lux will take us. Ay, 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 Tabiai, Lachai Chavadayo, Hey, 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 My tribe and my teachers raised me traditional. They raised me Washington, which is our religion. And basically, they taught me all of the songs that I sing. And each song has a unwritten law that it contains. And in this instance, the law is stating that when the world was created and the people were placed where they were placed, everything on the world was given a light, a spiritual light. And basically, as we move forward in life, sometimes the light gets dim and we need help. So basically, when the people, the tribal nations, partake in their sacred foods, and they will receive the light from all of those foods, whether they were our brother, the salmon, or all of the aquatic life in the ocean, in the rivers, the deer, the various roots that our people partake in and gather, and the huckleberries, and most importantly, the water, which is the most powerful medicine that we know. So I think tonight I'd like to maybe recognize this day, and I'm glad that I could be here to witness this, because I think that the tribal nations are going to have to recognize and realize that they worked on a document, and that document will be put in place and carried out by the tribal nations, and they will speak for our brother, the salmon. So my prayers tonight is that the people, the tribes, can forgive each other and that they can move forward with this in a good way, because it's going to take a united effort for the tribes to gain some ground on the management of the fisheries in the ocean, in the rivers, and wherever else they exist. So this much I say tonight. Achla Ikush. With that, contact the up the thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I'd like to invite Wilbur up. Wilbur is Yakima, but I think he'll explain what tribe he really is from. Introduce yourself, Wilbur.
Yeah, I am Klickitat, one of the 14 tribes of the Yakima Nation, located along the Columbia River, and that's what my real name is, Slockish, and my given imposed name by the missionaries is Wilbur Slockish Jr. And I take this time to celebrate and remember how our people were before the European invaders came and started drawing lines. So our people, we traveled and we traded to the entire continent until those lines and the foreign government imposed rules and regulations on our people, took control of our natural food supplies, and have devastated their returns to our grounds with their economic progress. And so we're here to encourage the federal agencies to realize it's more than just harvest is going to save it. There's other things out there in this world that are killing off and not letting the salmon recreate, not letting them go back to their homelands, because salmon is the giver of nutrients within the entire basin. Now they have been shut off from their home waters, the headwaters where the fish go up. And we're not only food for our people, but food for all of the animals, birds, and other insects and stuff that consumed and spread the nutrients. And then when the floods would come, they would bring those nutrients down into our areas to replenish the land. So we are not strangers to this land. This is part of where my people come to harvest foods. That is now covered with blacktop. The camas beds are plowed under and all of that. So our foods were everywhere. We didn't need to put a plow in the ground. They come back naturally. So with that, I feel that to honor this here, I have when you come into our land, that was our ways to give a gift to the visitor. And in honor of this here event, we're going to put a medallion that signifies people from the north, people from the west, people from the south, and people from the east are again reconnecting to assume our old traditional ways of trading with each other and connections, all that we had with this land, what it meant to us and how we took care of it. So this is for Russ to remember these days that we're connected again and we're not recognizing that line that separates our people. I didn't know there was 4 signatures, so I only have 2 gifts for, I can't call him a visitor, our local. But to remember the trade routes that we had here too with the coastal people trading for clams and oysters and crabs, red huckleberries, and also the cedar that was bigger than our cedar. So this one is the bear, the strength that Ron has been displaying for our natural food supply, the salmon, and trying to get the message out to we need to do more. So with that, and with these, I hope that our people will remember that this day and cherish it and remember our peoples are all brothers.
Oh, that's it. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Wilbur. It's a great honor. I'm now going to invite up Gord, who's going to recognize a lot of those who were contributors to the document that we are going to sign and summarize the document in terms of its commitment. Gord, Sterritt.
Simgiget, Segamadak, Gan, Kubuilsik, Luamgodi will buxom Yuxatun. Chiefs, matriarchs, prince and princesses, salmon warriors. It is with good heart that I welcome you this evening to the signing of this intertribal MOU. My hereditary name is Sakyo, and I am a hereditary chief from the village of Kispiox, within the Gitxsan Nation, with traditional territory in both the Nass and Skeena watersheds. You know me as Gord Sterritt, or most of you that know me as Gord Sterritt. And along with having the honor of being the chair of the First Nations Caucus of the Pacific Salmon Commission, member of the Southern Panel, I also have responsibilities in the Fraser watershed as the executive director of the Upper Fraser Fisheries Conservation Alliance. I want to thank Ron and Wilbur and the acknowledgement, territorial acknowledgement. And I'd like to acknowledge the territory we are gathering on for this important event, the traditional lands of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. Doix and Nissim for allowing us to conduct our business on your territory. As mentioned, this evening is about the signing of the MOU, which was founded on the following principles: recognition of tribes and First Nations as co-managers and respect for tribes and First Nations sovereignty, rights, and trust responsibilities. Commitment to joint environmental stewardship to rebuild salmon populations for future generations through habitat restoration and protection, as well as the incorporation of Indigenous values and utilization of traditional knowledge alongside Western science in salmon management. These principles were codified through a previous exercise when we developed the social cultural report that can be found on the PSC website, and created opportunity to get to this stage and the implementation of an exercise to test drive the MOU in its earliest stages, which I'll touch on shortly. First, I want to acknowledge everyone here and their support, your support for the questions and interest to ensure clarity in what we have worked to achieve. But I must specifically acknowledge the following. Thank you to Earth Economics, Olivia, Jessica, and the team for their support in our intertribal endeavors as we enter this next era of PSC and rekindle our traditional relationships. Earth Economics has been instrumental in understanding our needs and herding the cool cats, like Ron, to achieve our objectives, including the social cultural report I mentioned previously. I have to acknowledge the First Nations Fisheries Council, Stu Barnes, Jansen Wong, and Will Corolla, who are here supporting us every step of the way. DFO, the PSC and the PSC family, and other government entities, Canadian and US, for acknowledging and respecting our work and creating space within the PSC agenda to engage in a meaningful way. Last but not least, the US Tribal Caucus. I'd just like to acknowledge, and I'd also like to acknowledge the late Lorraine Loomis and Terry Williams, who championed these relationships throughout their careers Knowing the greater the collaboration, the better chance we have to ensuring our salmon resources for future generations. Now to the MOU. While the MOU formalizes our relationship with each other, provides structure and supports the respectful and collaborative relationships between tribes and First Nations within and outside the PSC process, there's a lot more work to do, such as establishing terms of reference, working through the logistics, but most importantly, it seeks to advance the following goals: sustainable and healthy salmon populations, and also to meet social, spiritual, and economic and cultural needs of current and future generations. Enhance tribal and First Nations capacity as it relates to fisheries governance. Information sharing and dialogue among the tribes and First Nations that supports conservation as well as the resource management. And harvest use within as it relates to the PST and Pacific Salmon Commission. And the acknowledgement and incorporation of Indigenous practices, cultures, values, and traditions and knowledge systems in the PSC process. Through all of that, ensuring conservation needs are met first and foremost. We're in a period of great uncertainty and on a number of fronts, and only with all of us working together, we'll have a fighting chance to address the issues that salmon, and by extension, we are challenged with. Before I wrap up, I'd be remiss if I didn't go back to talking about the Fraser panel and the technical committee project to pilot a communications protocol and use that protocol to address potential issues as they emerge, and whether it be in season, pre-season, or post-season, and how to communicate those issues in a respectful manner, mindful of the domestic obligations of each party. There are many who have been involved in the project, but I must mention Marcel Shepard, Gordon Rose, Jason Groven, and Kelsey Campbell, who have been diligent in keeping the process going and holding the pen on this project in a parallel with the development of the MOU. And with that, I thank you all. Hamia Nilosum, and I'm going to turn it back to Ron to fill in the gaps.
Thank you, Gord. Great summary of this journey. This has been a long journey. It has a long history. Sometimes we say it's been the journey, the 40-year journey of us here in the PSC family since 1985. But for us, it's hundreds of years of partnerships and kinship with regard to the commitments that Gord outlined. You know, putting together the MOU, which you all will receive a copy of, and understanding the spirit that is in the MOU. The good news, it only took us 2 weeks to decide what font size it was going to be in. And but in it, words make a difference, and we had to think through, you know, that we understood what we intended, what our commitment was between the First Nations and the tribes. We've been meeting throughout this 40-year journey here with PSE, sharing best practices, sharing why the salmon is so important to us. I want to remind you that, you know, that this document that took us quite a while, working with Earth Economics as well, with regard to the social significance that Gord noted in his remarks. And that was not easy. Olivia and our team had to interview a lot of chiefs, a lot of leadership, a lot of elders with regard to why is salmon so important to our communities, to our culture, to our way of life, and to recognize, as Wilbur pointed out, it's deeper than that. It's deeper than just salmon. And so we said that we needed to better organize ourselves. We went through a very deliberative process, and we kept thinking to ourselves, in respect to our nation-to-nation relationship as Indigenous peoples, we need to figure out how we were going to actually begin this process. And we knew that to get it vetted by all the indigenous nations from north to south and east to west was going to be a very onerous process. So we needed to start somewhere. We even thought we were going to do a witnessing page. We thought, no, well, we're overplaying it for now. But you are all witnesses to this event. You are all witnesses to what commitment that we're making with each other to understand why salmon is so important to us and the uniquenesses of it to each and every one of us. As Billy Frank Jr. used to always say, every river has a people. And we do know that. We embrace it and we take care of it. That's our job. So this document, quite frankly, from my perspective, helps us find time, make time. Today in the 21st century, we find ourselves busier than ever before. But this commitment is so that we're not going to just meet here in January and February or in the fall. We're going to find ways in which we can meet and collaborate and work together to help each other understand what we can do to do our job to protect the salmon so that it will be sustained for future generations. And that's the commitment of this document. That's the spirit that's inside the document. And it's the commitment that we're all making together. It's the document that we trust will go on into future generations when we're long gone. And this commitment is still there. We hear lots and lots of speeches from our brothers and friends who go, the border is there between our two countries, but the border is invisible to indigenous peoples. It always was and always will be. We have that political environment that we work in, but we have a common cause. And so this document is intended so that we can try to improve that relationship between us as we move forward in this current environment. So I like Gord, deeply appreciate everybody who helped us get this document to what we think embodies the intent, the spirit, and put it into words as best we possibly can. We may have missed something. You may have spotted something that we didn't think of. It's okay. It's in there. And it's a dynamic document that will grow with each and every one of us. So I'm very proud to be a part of it. I can now put all those emails into another folder and park them now for a while. But what I'll do, I think I invite Russ up. I know he'd like to make a few remarks as well, but before we actually sign the document. Russ?
Singait La, Nung Jingwas, Hanadi Kigaga. Good day, everyone. My Haida name is Nung Jingwas. I'm a hereditary chief from Skidegate in Haida Gwaii. Belang Wadluk and Gauthul Kilaga. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. I just wanted to make a few comments. I started out in the Salmon Commission in 1993 on the Northern Panel and joined the commission, became a commissioner in 2001. And at that time, First Nations in the U.S. and the tribes weren't meeting regularly. We established a First Nations caucus made up of the First Nation representatives in Canada. And then we once or twice a session, we'd get together with the U.S. tribes and share our experiences. And it was very clear right from the beginning that the relationship in the U.S. was much different between the U.S. tribes and the federal government and the states of Washington, Oregon, and Alaska. And that was all that was all in part of the Pacific Salmon Treaty process. So we were learning a lot. In Canada, we only have a few treaties in place, and many First Nations are working towards treaties or reconciliation agreements, or in the case of the Haida Nation, although we're working on reconciliation, we also have a title case which is moving forward to be heard in 2026. which it has to do with not just the land area, but also the ocean and marine resources. So this is formalizing a relationship which exists, through the Pacific Salmon Treaty, but it also, as Ken Malloway reminded the caucus just on Sunday, there's long-standing relationships between First Nations in Canada and First Nations in the U.S., and we'll be building on that as we move forward. And it's also a way that we can bring our values and our interests forward, within this Pacific Salmon Commission, in a coordinated fashion, because this process is changing. There's negotiations approximately every 10 years, and it's an opportunity to look at kind of how we might do things differently, better for the fish, for conservation, for First Nations, as well as stakeholders in Canada and the United States. Hawa. Thank you, everyone.
Murray Ned, when we first walked in and Murray says, let's just sign this thing and move on. But a little bit of pressure. So he's got some remarks he'd like to share as well. Murray.
HKCM. For those that don't know me, my ancestral name is Colossenton, and really proud and honored to be amongst the tribes and nations, our stakeholder colleagues and the commissioners and all. And I want to extend a gratitude to the Warm Springs for allowing us to be in the territory to do this important work. My name is shared with my two sons, Kelsey and Brandon. Prior to that, it was my late father had the name Colossenton, Clarence Ned Jr. And then before he had it, my great-grandfather, Salzmanton, his first name was Salzmanton as well. He carried two names. So that's kind of where I come from. Our territory is in Sumas First Nation. It's part of the Stalo communities out in the Fraser Valley. 24 First Nations are tribes that are involved with the original tribe there. And if I could identify what Stalo means, Stalo actually translates to two things. One is people of the river, the Fraser River today, as we know it, and the river of all rivers, the Stalo, which has been changed. Its name is the Fraser River now, today, right? And where I was going with this, by extension, I'm also Coast Salish, 54, 56 First Nations and tribes in the Pacific Northwest. And so that becomes a huge inherent obligation to ensure we have relationships, ensure we look after the resource in a good way. And I think this is very representative of, as Ron has mentioned, not recognizing the border and ensuring those tribal and ancestral relationships are maintained. And there's somebody else here that's been here much longer than I, much wiser, and I want to defer most of my comments to Willaluk, Hereditary Chief Ken Malloway. Before I go there, I just wanted to recognize that the gifts that were exchanged today are something that we should all acknowledge, and we should all acknowledge that we have diverse and individual ways of conducting that within the tribes and nations all up and down the coast. So we want to reserve some space to do some of that work when they come back to Canada in February 2026. And had we done this in our territory, we would have conducted this in the Longhouse. We would have invited everybody, and we would have paid a speaker to speak on behalf of our family, which is the tribes and the nations, because sometimes you can get a little emotional when you're talking about that, right? So the speaker is good at that. They have that cultural background, and they're very poised. And then often you would have drummers and singers. Of course, you would hire them to do the work. And as Ron mentioned, well, first of all, you gotta have a big meal and make sure everybody's happy, right? And as Ron has mentioned, you call witnesses, and the witnesses are very important. They convey the messaging. They tell us what happened today. And they convey the messages into the next generation and on and on and on. So with that, I look forward to bringing some of that cultural context to be with our tribes and the nations in Canada next year. And I'll call on Willaluk, Hereditary Chief.
Thank you. As Murray said, my name is Willaluk. One of the hereditary chiefs of the Suppah tribe. There are 4 hereditary chiefs in my tribe, and we've been the leadership of the Suppah tribe for 1,000 years, long before we ended up under the federal government and the Indian Act. I worked with my friend Ron here quite a long time ago on the Pacific Northwest Treaty. And him and I and Gibby spent a lot of time, Gibby Jacob, working on it. And we signed the treaty in 1995 in Squamish at Capilano, Joe Mathias' house. It was a pretty big gathering. A lot of people signed. And we held a lot of hope for it, but it didn't have a secretariat, and it didn't have proper funding, and it also got kind of big and unwieldy. It was at first between the U.S. tribes and the First Nations in BC, but then while the Hawaiians heard about it and they wanted to sign up, and they came over and they signed up. And then the Maoris heard about it and they wanted to be part of it. And then the Aborigines signed on, so they got really, really big, and it was too big, and it didn't have proper funding or secretariat or anything, and it kind of went away. But we've been talking about it, about trying to put it back together, and this is the first step, the MOU. So I'm glad that all of you folks are here, and I'm glad that we've gathered. And like Murray said, we want to do this in a big way, and hopefully in a long house. We want to gather and we start off by feeding people, and we'll be getting ready for it. And we'll be putting Chinook salmon away. So that we can feed people. It's really embarrassing for our people to call our friends together and then not feed them. That's part of who we are. When we had gatherings in the past in our area, they'd go on for days, and we had enough fish to feed everybody. And sometimes it'd be for a wedding. Sometimes it'd be somebody was getting a name, and we'd have a gathering, and it'd go on for days. And then sometimes the people from down here, they'd go up there and they'd stay there for the winter. And we had enough fish to feed them. We had enough to feed them. People could spend time with each other. And when we went to meetings, you stayed in the longhouse until it was done, until you settled it. Now we're looking at our watch and we're going like, yeah, we only got 5 more minutes, and then we got to wrap it up and go away. So that's the life we live today. And some of you might notice I only got one leg, so I don't talk as long as I used to. But I was happy to hear Billy Frank's name mentioned. We worked really, really closely together for years, starting back in 1985. He helped us out a lot because we were so far behind the U.S. tribes. They had the boat decision, and he came in and worked with us. One time though, when he got to the border and they asked him what he was doing. He said, I'm going to go meet with the First Nations at the BC Aboriginal Fisheries Commission, and we're going to talk about fisheries. And they turned him away. They said he was an undesirable alien, and they sent him away because he didn't want him coming up there talking to our Indians. We came down to talk to Lummi one time about early Stuart sockeye, and the people up in Canada, they got mad at us for talking to the Americans. And I'm going like, those are my cousins, my uncles, my aunties. That's my family. I'm related to virtually everybody at Nooksack. The border, it doesn't mean anything to us. So it's just natural that we try to get back together, put our heads together. I remember a lot of quotes, but one that I always think about is when Sitting Bull was getting ready to meet, he started off by saying, let's put our minds together and see what kind of a life we can make for our children. And another elder that I hold dear in my heart is Joe Alec from Jam. He was fluent in our language, and I'm sorry to say that I'm not, but he started off every meeting with a short prayer. And the English version of it is, this is our territory. We have to look after everything that belongs to us. And that's how he started every meeting, was that short prayer. And it's short and concise, but it includes everything. So thank you all.
Pretty damn good one-legged speech. I remember the days when Kenny and Simon Lucas from over in the island used to figure out who could embarrass Lorraine Loomis the best. So we had a lot of fun in this forum over the years. So it's been a great journey for all of us. Okay, so we have 5 copies here. In the spirit of our president, we were going to bring on magic marker, but we're not going to do it that way. So, but anyhow, we've got some pins. I think we've got this geared up, right? Don't we, for signing all these? So I think what we need to do is just pass all down so we can start signing the ceremony. Okay. Get us organized, Murray. Okay. More. Got one more?
That's like calligraphy.
We could, in the spirit of our president, do something like this, you know, I don't know. Okay. That's it, guys. Thank you. Hey, guys. Yeah. Hey, brother.
Good to see you, Brent.
You get a picture, John?
Yeah. I'll get a picture. Oh,